Hi, I'm Parl Guthrie. I started a project the other day and I was a little apprehensive about how to cut the siding. So I experimented a little bit and got online and learned a little bit and thought that it might be beneficial for someone else if I show them how I solved my problem. This light behind me is going to be replaced with this. Well, this is what the lamps on our side of our garage look like right now, and I want to change them so they look more like. Seems to be working just fine. I had to put a piece of tape over the photocell to get it going during the daylight, but I think it looks all right. Now, as you can see, the old one only involves one piece of siding, so the plate mounted up there pretty nicely and didn't have to do any cutting. However, the new ones, here's a picture of the new one, is a little bit longer plate, and it involves at least two pieces of siding, if not three, depending on how high you want your lamp. Anyway, so I went on the internet to find out the best way to cut that hole in the siding and got several suggestions, and I'll show you what happened, what I did. Okay, the first thing you want to do is turn off the power. You don't want power coming to these things while you're working on them, otherwise you're going to have a surprise, a big surprise. So once the power is off, you take these screws, unscrew them, pull out the plate. There are your wires, 3 wires, black, white, and ground. Just grab a hold of the power wires and the neutral wires and unscrew them. And then unscrew the ground wire. Try not to lose the screws because they're hard to find sometimes. So now that we've got the old one out, now comes the hard part, putting the new one in. So putting the new one in, you want to make that as easy as possible. So I'm going to take this apart as much as I can to lessen the weight on it. These little screws right here, depending on the model you have, you can take them apart. Some of them anyway. This particular one, there's 2 screws. And this pulls out, and it makes it a lot easier to not have to worry about this, and only have to worry about mounting this. It's fairly light. As you can see, this LED light in here is built in, so I'm not able to use my flammable bulbs like I had before. That's okay. I'll use the one out on the corner of the property. It looks nice out there, but on the garage, these original ones are going to have to stay in there because I can't get those other bulbs in. These bulbs here will not fit in here, but that's all right. So now here's what I got to do next. So this is where I ran into a problem, how to mount this up here. Now, the way I did the other one, I mounted it right underneath there like this. I centered it in the hole, put this down, and drew a line here all the way down and across, and then I cut it. The problem with doing it that way is it doesn't line up with the holes in here. Let me show you real quick. So the problem is when you put this mounting bracket on here, this is supposed to go right in the middle like this, where it was before. The problem is when you line up these holes where these 2 screws have to go through like that, and you line it up here, you actually have to drill the hole in the siding way up here, higher. So we're actually involving 3 pieces of siding. This one, and this one I'm gonna have to cut. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go right here and only involve 2 of them. So what I ended up doing was having to move this from the center down about 1 inch, like that. That wasn't an easy job, but I'll show you how I did it. So I think you can see what I did was I just screwed these down a little bit further down so they weren't sticking out as far. So when I put this up here, they're not going to hit the back of this. Okay, next step. All right, since I want the top of this plate to mount right underneath this siding, I need to line this up, center this over here, and put it right underneath there like that. And then hold it up, and that's where my cut's going to be. So mark it. And there's my cut right there. Now, this was the whole idea of going on the internet and finding out how to cut this the best way possible. So I actually have a lot of tools in my shop. One thing that I never have had all these years is one of these, a multi-tool. So basically, that is what is the best thing to use after getting on the internet and getting several recommendations. That's what everybody's telling me that I should use to cut those holes. So I invested in one of those. It was pretty expensive though. I actually got the best battery they made for it. So that increased the price a little bit, but I'm glad I got it because it works great. Let me show you how great it works. Notice I didn't go all the way through. I made the initial line first because I wanted a straight line. If I were just going to keep pushing it through like this, I wouldn't get a very straight line. So it was better to actually make your line first and then go over it. Now I'll get this top portion. And this is going to help me with the line. Works pretty good. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's see if it fits. Now bend. Now all I got to do is line up these two screws here with this on the inside. That's going to be the hardest part. The purpose of this video to begin with was just to find out how to cut holes in the siding. But I ran into a few issues of lining up the wiring. So I'm not going to be able to mount this exactly in the center. It's going to have to come down a little bit so that those screws will line up. Show you how I did it. Okay, I repositioned it. So now this plate is about an inch or so below. So these screws will line up with the marking over here and over here. That should mean that the plate of the new light, the screw should go right in those holes. We'll see. I'm gonna connect those wires up first, so let's do that. Actually, it's starting to rain right now pretty hard, so I'm gonna cut here and continue tomorrow. Seattle weather is not always good for this kind of stuff. Check with you later. Okay, it's a couple days later, and then as you can see, the sun's out, so I'm gonna continue on this little project here. So back to this little plate. As you can see, I had to move the plate down, as I said before, and I've lined up these screws with my little mark that I made right here, and this screw with a little mark I made over here. So theoretically, when I put that plate up there, it should line up. Yeah, right. So let's see what happens. I guess I got to put the wires in first and then line it up. I can line it up first. Let's check it out. Okay, so let's tighten those screws down and make sure that it's going to hold. All right, let's see how that works. Okay, now before I connect the wires, I want to make sure that those two screws are going to come through the plate. So let's see what we got here. So I'll bring this up here. Bring it, oh, look at that. I'll be darned. Perfect. So now all I got to do is, once I tighten the wires in there, put the little clips on here, and it'll be all set. Okay, now that we got that all lined up, well, I needed to do one more thing. Because I moved this plate from centered up here down an inch, the holding nuts here and here are basically on the top, and there's nothing down here on the bottom. So I like to add a little bit of reinforcement down here. So I'm going to add one of these screws here. So when we tighten up these nuts and it pulls that plate forward, this screw is going to hold it back so it doesn't bend out too far. So let's do that. Actually, I'll get my There we go. Now it's nice and tight. All right, so now that that plate's all ready to go, all I got to do is hook that lamp up and see how it works. Let's do that. Okay, so I could have tied this lamp ground into this ground nut here, but since there's an extra slot right here for a screw, I thought I'd just separate it. And so let's do that. I think it's a lot easier to do that than try and tie it into the one up above. All right, now let's get to the power wires. Okay, so now we've got 3 white wires and 3 black wires that got to be all tied together. And there's 3 because the extra one is for the other side of the garage lights. This is kind of the middle one, so they all need to be tied together. Okay, nice and tight. So now that I got all 3 hooked up, let's see if that'll fit up in there. All right, looks like it's going to work. Put a little rubber washer on there. Tighten this down a little bit. Another rubber washer over here. Tighten it down. And let's go all the way. Give it a little extra tightness here. All right, feels good. Okay, well, so basically that's my project on how to cut the siding holes, get the lamps in there to fit nice, and I thank everybody who gave me the suggestions. Now it's on to another project. Good luck.